Good afternoon and welcome to yet another special edition of Labor Matters here on KBN TV, the finest television in Zambia. Well, we are live on Just TV channel 279, Go TV 27, Top Star 102. We are also live on our Facebook page, which is KBN TV. Make sure you do follow us on our Facebook page so that you don't get to miss any of our episodes of our Labor Matters. Well, I can safely say today we are looking at an interesting topic which I want a lot of us to pay attention to what we're going to be discussing today. On our previous episodes, we did look at an exciting topic as well, but today's topic is one amazing topic. We don't want you, our viewers, to miss any of it. Well, it's a lovely afternoon where I'm not alone in the studio. I am with my usual guest, Mr. Kabanda. Welcome to KBN TV once more.
Thank you very much.
It's amazing to see you again.
Great to see you.
How are you doing?
Doing very, very fine.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I must make mention that last week we did have a lot of text messages from our viewers. It's exciting to note that a lot of people they're engaging in this conversation, which is insightful, educative for our viewers. And I believe some messages we never read all the text messages which were sent.
Yeah.
So maybe we can just have a quick look on some of the text messages which were sent, or maybe elaborate more on what was sent last week.
All right. There were a number of messages that came through, and some of the messages were actually touching on things that we have already tackled: issues of termination, issues of leave days, and a number of other concerns that people have, even on Mother's Day. So, as we've said, for matters that relate to, for instance, the way employees might have separated with their employers, we are actually forwarding those things to the Minister of Labour.
Sure. And today we are looking at an exciting topic: termination by redundancy. Quite an interesting topic. And I can also make mention that last week we did have over 3,200 views on our social media page, just on Labor Matters.
Yeah.
Show. How do you feel that this show is engaging to the viewers out there?
It's actually a great thing, and we are happy, and we greatly appreciate those that have been following us, and also coming to our inboxes and sending in their messages. It's always a great thing to receive feedback, and we are happy that a lot of employees, managers, colleagues in the HR fraternity, they are actually calling us and saying that they're benefiting from this program. But also having the employees understanding their rights and obligations at the same time. Of course, the employers also understanding their rights and also obligations in line with the law. So we are happy with the feedback, and we're looking forward to sharing more and more of ideas. This program is meant to really help employees and employers to really get the best out of the employment relationship. So we are glad with the feedback we are receiving.
Sure. Well, our viewers, if you're wondering who Mr. Kabanda is, Mr. Kabanda is a consultant. Mr. Kabanda is a managing and leadership advisor with over 15 years of senior management and consulting experience with various companies in Zambia. And if you have about a topic of discussion, which is termination by redundancy, make sure you do get in touch with us using the number which is right on your TV screen. Well, don't call us, just drop us a text message and we will read it right here. But Mr. Kanda, before we do talk about our topic of discussion today, would you mind just explaining something about the payments that should be given to employees who have been dismissed, as this seems to be a major issue in a number of text messages that were sent by our viewers?
Yes, you're very right. A lot of questions that actually came were around the issue of non-payment of terminal benefits. Some people are saying they were dismissed and it has taken so long. Their employers have not paid them. It's important to understand that the provisions of the law are very clear in terms of Section 51 of the Employment Code Act number 3 of 2019 that when you're summarily dismissing an employee, you pay them on their last day of work. That means all the accrued benefits, you pay their salaries, their arrears, you pay their leave days. If they are working on a contract that allows for gratuity, pay all those things on the last day of work. It's important that we understand that the person's job is actually coming to an end. And so it is just human and professional that you look into also the welfare of the person who is leaving, despite the fact that you are dismissing them because they probably have done something that as a company you are not happy with. But even then, it's important that you make sure that they are paid and they walk away so that they can go and do their personal things. It could be investing, it could be taking care of their families. It's important.
So now let's talk about some of them who were fired but never got to receive their monies or payments. What step is to be taken in such a scenario?
Yeah, so if somebody was dismissed or they separated with the employer in whichever other format it could be, and the person has not been paid, what is key is that the employee or the former employee in this case should put together their papers, should make sure that they put together, if there was a contract, make sure that contract is prepared, any communication from the employer, anything that, any paperwork that they could have had. It's very, very important that if you left employment, you put together all your papers, and then you take those papers to labor office. And I understand some of the people were working in situations or in companies where they were not basically given contracts or anything of that nature. So what is key really is that the employee should put together some documentation or try to jot down what could have applied to you, even if it was an oral contract, so that you now bring that before labor office. And once you bring that to labor office will go through. That's why they are there. And they want to make sure that as an employee, your rights are respected, or former employee, and also the employer is also giving what is due to the employee. So labor office will look into all those things. Sometimes they will call the person or the company and then try to make sure that you are paid. Beyond that, cases can be taken to the courts. And even there are also these small claims courts and so on. So what is key is if you can't get your payment after you have left employment, you have the right to proceed to the courts to pursue the payments.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, so before we delve into our topic of discussion, would you differentiate between a summary dismissal and termination by redundancy?
Yes, so what happens is that sometimes these things, people mix them. And it's important that business owners and HR practitioners and even employees understand the difference. So an employee, remember from when we started these episodes, we're talking about the employee and the employer entering into a relationship at the very beginning of employment, and that is called the employment relationship. Now, the manner in which that relationship will end has to be done in line with the laws. Now, the employment relationship or the employment itself can be terminated by the employee. So what happens on the employee side? You have the employee, for instance, can resign. It's the employer has that right. And the employer cannot even say, no, we are not accepting your resignation. The employment has finished. I know there are all these deep discussions around what happens when, of course, maybe we were about to start investigations. Now this person has resigned. And no, the person has resigned. The employment has finished. So an employee can initiate the separation from the employer, and it is within their right. And the employee does not even in any way need to give you reasons. Because we see this a lot of times where employers will say, no, but why are you leaving? No, I've resigned. I'm out.
You don't have to.
There is no legal obligation for the employee to give any form of reason why they are leaving, except out of courtesy. For instance, at the time that the employer is holding the exit interviews, at that point the employee can explain, okay, I'm leaving, maybe I have a better offer or something like that. But legally, there is no obligation. This is on employee-initiated separations. Now, if it is the employer, now here we have a bigger issue. On the employer side, the law is very clear that if the employer is going to separate with the employee, first of all, if you go to Section 52 of the Employment Code, Act number 3 of 2019, in there under subsection 1, it will show you that the contract of employment can be terminated in line with the contract and in any manner that is permissible by law. Now, again, we have to emphasize things that were happening in the past where if you have a contract which says we can terminate this contract by just without reason, such things have now finished. Because now in the new law, there is a requirement that the employer should give reason. So the employee, there's no obligation, but on the employer, there is a requirement that the employer has to give a reason. Now, when you read further, under chapter 52, subsection 2, it says, what are those acceptable reasons? The reasons should be valid, and these valid reasons include the employee's capacity or conduct or operational requirements of the employer, of the undertaking. So now, let's make things even more clear here. So first of all, we had the employee who is leaving. So when the employee is leaving, that is their reason, they initiated it. But when it is the employer who wants to initiate the separation, split even these things into two. So within the reasons that are initiated by the employer, there is employee-related issues and employer-related issues. So now you have two things to deal with, even for those separations which are initiated by the employer. So if the reasons are attributed to the employee, there is a process to follow. And those processes, it different from operational requirements. So for performance or conduct, the law now says you need to make sure that if it is the separation which relates to the performance or conduct of the employee, the employee should then be given an opportunity to be heard. This is under section 52, subsection 3. So this means, from what we've been saying in the past 2 episodes, that you need to make sure that this is a process where they're suspected, you do investigations, you charge them, they exculpate themselves. They also have the right to even appeal until such a time that they have exhausted the whole process. Then you separate. So on the part of dismissal, summary dismissal, this is the requirement. On the other side, it's operational. It has really nothing to do with the performance or behavior of the employee. And it's important that there's what happens, employers try to combine these two things, okay? Maybe they don't like someone. If I don't like you, okay, for whatever reason, I will say, oh, I think this section, which Patricia handles, I think we are taking it out, okay? Afterwards, you now change the name and something, and you are still hiring some other people. So what we advise employers is that don't mix these two things, because when it comes to operational requirements, it has nothing to do with the performance of the person. If indeed the person was not performing or behaving in line with the requirements of the company, have the courage to go through the process. Don't try to hide in redundancy in order for you to separate with the employee. No. For performance and the behavioral related issues, employee should go through a disciplinary process. Then you can then summarily dismiss them.
Wow, yeah. That's amazing, insightful about summary dismissal. But Mr. Kabanda, what constitutes termination by redundancy?
Yeah, so redundancy, it's important to understand. So sometimes it's just important that, like I said, you are not mixing these two things. Two of them, they follow different processes. When it comes to termination by redundancy, what basically constitutes that, you go to section 55. So section 55 will really help you, first of all, to define what would be considered as redundance under subsection 1. It will then also explain to you the process to follow under subsection 2, as well as what you need to pay under subsection 3. So now, what would constitute a redundance is where the employer separates with the employee, because, for instance, the employer will or anticipates that they will cease to carry out the business for which the employee was employed. And also, it could be because the employer will cease to carry out certain works in a particular workplace or a particular function for which that employee was also hired. It could also be around the fact that the employer has adjusted or changed the contract, and now that contract, the employee has not consented. So let me start actually with this part. If the employer changes conditions of service for an employee, the employee has the right to accept or to refuse. And now when the employee accepts the changes to the contract, that one will be okay. But if the employee has refused, then that now will be redundancy. So now, when we come to the other aspects under redundancy, what would constitute redundancy? And maybe to make things clear even for our viewers, let's look at it this way. The change or the finishing of employment can actually be at the company-wide level. Remember that companies go through different challenges or different operational challenges, for instance. So you can have a company, the whole company is being closed, okay? You can also have a situation, for instance, if some companies, they will come into the country after the works are done, the company could close. Or the decisions are made at a higher level that this company's operation, maybe the company came into the country, was set up, you no longer need it. Or even if the company is within the country, but then they find that, okay, we may not continue with our operations, they can close. That is at a bigger or higher level in terms of a company. Sometimes it's not the company. Sometimes the company is there, it is sometimes the department or a branch. So you could have a company, for instance, which was set up and it has branches in Lusaka, in Kitwe, Chipata, and various other areas. Okay. Now, as things are progressing, you find that you no longer need a particular branch or some branches. And this happened a lot, especially when COVID came in, just as an example, where some companies now, it was found that you really cannot sustain operations in a lot of areas. So again, there you can have redundancies where a particular branch is being taken out, or some branches, okay? Sometimes redundancies can also happen where, for instance, it's within a department. So you can have a department, let's say a department that is in charge of security, or cleaning, or whatever it is, any department. Now, due to changes in the way, remember we said operational requirements of the company, you find that this company now says, okay, so this time we will, instead of us hiring security guards and having them on our payroll, we only need one guy who will be now managing an outsourced security firm. So at that point, the whole department is taken out. So it could be in marketing, so maybe you change your approach. So these changes can happen at a departmental level. Sometimes the changes that lead to this redundancy could happen actually at a position level. So you have, remember, you can have a company level, a branch level, a departmental level. Even within the department is there, sometimes it's the positions. So you could have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 positions within a department. Let's take, for example, in HR. In human resource, you have the recruiting officer, the payroll officer, the training and development officer, industrial relations, and you can have a whole range of HR functions. But then the company then changes. It says maybe some of the functions will be outsourced. Maybe you get the recruitment function to give to an outsourced firm or things of that nature. So maybe you don't need all these guys. So the position can go. So it could be in finance. You say we are going to bring an external institution to run our financials, or it could be audit, it could be marketing, it could be any position could also be taken out. Sometimes you have the positions, sometimes at the micro level, it's the numbers that you are dealing with. So what you're looking at is, for instance, you could have 7 journalists or 10 journalists. Now you're saying, okay, given our operational requirements, because maybe we're now investing in this technology, or we are maybe doing more of social media, and maybe we don't need all these journalists, so maybe we need fewer ones. Sometimes it could be operators. You now have this big machine which can do the work of 20 people, and you just need 3 guys who can operate it remotely and things like that. So you could actually take out a number of people. So redundancy, as you can see, what we are looking at, it has nothing to do with the performance and behavior of the people involved. It has everything to do with the operational requirements. We are saying, look, we might not need all these people or this branch or this position and things of that nature. And sometimes actually this is coming through restructuring. Some companies, they do this internally through their HR. But if the company can't do that, or the business can't do that internally, normally they'll bring on board the consultant. So it is those kind of things that need to be taken into consideration. And you can see that the processes would also be very different from summary dismissal, because in this particular case, you're looking at the operations of the company and saying, look, can we sustain our operations, or can we change the way we're doing things? So this can be necessitated by a lot of factors that have to do with the business.
Well,
yeah.
To our viewers, if you've just joined us, you're watching Labour Matters on KBN TV, channel 279 GSTV, 27 Go TV, and 102 on Topstar Decoder. Make sure you do follow us on our Facebook page, which is KBN TV. We are also streaming live there. And in the studios, if you are wondering, just joined us, as I said earlier, I am with my usual guest, Mr. Owen Kabanda, who is helping us elaborate more on our topic of discussion for today, which is termination by redundancy. Well, Mr. Kabanda, there are some situations where an employer wishes to use termination by redundancy as a way of separating with the employee. What steps should they take to do things within the law?
Yeah, it's very important actually that things are done within the law, because let's just remember that employee separation is not an easy thing. We've been working with various companies. It's not an easy thing. So what normally starts to happen, of course, there are provisions of the law that we will talk about in line with Section 55, subsection 2. First of all, and this you won't find it in the law, but in terms of what happens on the ground, or what should happen on the ground, or at least what we've done in the past. The first and the starting point is, first of all, for the employer to understand, or the business owner, or to understand, first of all, what you want to do with this business. Because sometimes people rush to effecting these redundancies, and then afterwards you are stuck. You start actually now bringing back the people. So you need to be in a space where, first of all, you understand the business. The business owner or the employers need to sit and think through everything. What this means is look at the business and its operations, the legal requirements, the financials, and everything. So there's actually a lot of work that goes on in the background. So normally, once it is very clear, sometimes it can come as an instruction, like for big companies. For bigger companies or those that have been operating for a long time, it could be a shareholder makes a decision that we are no longer going into this direction, change. Like I said, cut off that branch or close this company, because now, or sometimes the company is bought by another company, or it is going to change entirely. So there are legal provisions, of course, that allow for instance, if the company is being bought, you can actually just transfer a contract. But in many cases, it is advisable that you pay off everything that this person had, because, of course, when we talk about transfer of contracts, it has various other provisions. Now, when that decision is made by the shareholder that now this company needs to be closed, or this branch, that is for bigger companies or big institutions, or as a result of the restructuring process that has been happening, when those decisions are being made, some of the things we do advise is that you need to sit down and start looking at what are the legal obligations of the company. So first of all, start going through, first of all, the contracts, first of all, the law itself. The company needs to now understand what are the provisions of the contracts. If there is a union there, you have to read the provisions of the collective agreement, the conditions of service for the company. So there is a lot of work that goes on in the background. So you have to, and it's very easy, and I'll say not very easy, it's easier when you're dealing with a company which has, for instance, these short-term contracts or maybe long-term contracts of 2 years, 3 years, because you will be really looking at just maybe that 3 years or 5 years. Where you are dealing with people who have permanent contracts, you have a contract that goes as far as 1985 or 1990. So there's a lot of work and that's why we say these things don't make emotional decisions, because at the end of the day, what is needed is you sit down, you start going through, okay, after you read the law, or you get the consultants to do that for you, there will be that review of the law, then the review of the contracts. So the contract, you have to start now going on the actual employee file. Going on the file from the very time the person started work, page by page, what is there? Because that affects, for instance, the computations, which we'll talk about. Usually we advise employers that take your time, read through everything, so that now you are in a space where now you start also computing what will be like the terminal benefits. The reason for that is that you want to make very informed decisions. So you find that after you sit down, you are calculating, you might not even have paid somebody some arrears. They finish their contracts, you are still holding on to their gratuity or leave days or whatever it is. So at that point, you first of all do the calculations. And that takes time. And I know sometimes you have employers saying, no, look, you need to do this very fast. But it's important that you do the things correctly. Now, when the employer or the consultant does the computation, there is one additional thing that now you start thinking through, and that is what mode are you going to use if you're going to give notice or you're not going to give notice. And we'll explain to you why that little thing there becomes critical. If you compute, let's say we are in July and you are required, by end of October, this employee has to go. You can compute up to October and the person will be notified. We will talk about that process. And the person continues to work. Now, what normally employers have to consider, you have to look at, okay, if this employee continues to work, what then happens? Because sometimes when the employee knows that they are going, there's nothing else you can do, waste. So sometimes thefts start to happen, vandalism. Sometimes employees don't even report because they have received the notification. So that's why there is that second part I talked about where you compute and say, okay, if we were to pay you as if you have served the notice. So that's why in the computations, we also now start to load the notice pay. And when you have these two figures, the employer has to sit down and, for instance, you compute everything, and for these people to go, you have to pay maybe 300,000, as an example. And then so that is if the person works up to the end of the notice period. You compute the notice pay, the cost of the notice pay, maybe you find it's another additional 100,000. Or 200,000, I don't know, just as an example. You then have to make that decision. So the employer needs to be in a space where they are not taking emotional decisions. You have to look at, because remember, there's a requirement that you have to pay this person at the end of the termination, once you terminate them. So it's important from the beginning, even before you start thinking about so many things, look at the financials and see where are we standing in terms of the total cost of this redundancy. Now, let's come to the provisions of the law in terms of the procedure to follow. The law is, again, very clear under Section 55, I think subsection 2. One of the things you have to look at is, first of all, in 2 months' time, 60 days, you need to notify Labour Office. You need to tell them why you want to carry out this redundancy. So you can see that while some employers would want to jump from summary dismissal and use redundancy as a way to separate, it doesn't help you, because there are also all these obligations by law that you have to follow. So on redundancy, so 2 months before, you need to notify Labour Office why you want to carry out this redundancy. You also need to tell them the categories of employees who have to separate with. You have to also show them the kind of package that is there. So you need to show, we are not saying show the actual computations, but you need to outline the salaries, the arrears, the gratuities, and the redundant space, and all those things that you are going to pay the employees. And that has to be in writing. It's not a phone call to a Labour office and you say, no, but I informed you. Those things have to be in writing. So that's why we say, think everything through. And you have to now balance the processes and the requirements of the law and your financial capacity as the employer. So once you inform Labour Office in that space of 2 months, not less than 2 months, you then also can look at the aspects of informing the employees. Now, the employees, the law requires that you have to inform the employee not less than 30 days, okay? So you give them that 1 month notice. Now, I need to emphasize here, so if you have a company that has a collective agreement, if a company has a collective agreement, you need to look at what is in that collective agreement, because you find that, and that is the agreement between the unions and the employer. So in that collective agreement, you may find that they have put that the employee should be given 3 months notice. So you have to abide by that. That's why we're saying, don't use emotions. These are business decisions you are making. So you need to read the provisions of the law, provisions of the contracts, provisions of the conditions of service, and provisions of the collective agreements, so that when you are making those decisions, you are, because sometimes you have the owner of the business who wakes up and says, by next week or this month end, when you are paying, I don't want all these guys. But it can't be like that. If you are saying redundancy, there is all this process to follow. And I know it's very difficult sometimes for business owners or employers or shareholders. They want to make sometimes drastic decisions. But it's important that you think everything through, because you have to abide by these provisions. Now, even as you are making these notifications to Labour Office or notifications to employees, it's also important to think through the impact of that notification. Okay? And that's why, remember, when we were talking about the need to compute what will be the terminal benefits that you are paying to these employees who are leaving, you could do both, where you look at if they worked, how much would it cost, if they worked up to the end of the notice period, or the other option where you are looking at if they don't work up to the end of the notice period. Now, while the law provides for those 30 days, 60 days, and so on, there is something that on the ground, practically, we need to look at. Number one is the aspect that these are people matters, and people have feelings and thoughts. So it's always advisable that you handle that process very well, professionally. If possible, do a lot of counseling to the employees. Because remember, the person is losing the job. So it's not as easy as, okay, maybe when they're coming in, you celebrate. But this is at the end, the person is going to lose a job. Unfortunately, I have to tell you, it is a very painful thing. Because, for instance, you are the breadwinner You are there, everybody is respecting you. And remember, as human beings, some of these things, even the titles, even the friends you have, even how the family treats you, it's largely, it could be attributed to the job you do. Yeah. Okay? People will respect you even at church. Oh, boss, it is. Oh, no, you need to be in this committee. And because of this job you are doing, the very moment you are going to lose this job, even at home, you find you just try to sit there in the sitting room to to change your channel. You can't do that. All of a sudden they were calling you, somebody was calling you honey, sweetheart. Then for the first time in a long time you hear your first name. Hey, John. So you mean you're just sitting there? Hey, boss. Everything changes. And so it is actually a very depressing thing. And I'll tell you, over the years, these are issues that we've dealt with. And it is not an easy thing. So if the employer can have at least sufficient time, you take the employees through some counseling process. Because if these things are not handled properly, some people could even end up committing suicide. And that's why when we are talking about that aspect of should you let the employee continue working up to the end of the notice pay, unless you really assess that it is safe or it is okay, because sometimes somebody has lost, they have received the letter that their job is finishing. So you can even have a guy who slaps the boss because why are you telling me this? Sometimes they don't even come because either way, I'm gone. Yeah.
In the next 3 months, all we needed here.
Exactly.
Why did the report was the following day?
That's exactly what starts to happen. So it is a very emotional thing. The other thing we also advise is if you can, even within the shortest period of time, bring on board some people who can teach these people some survival skills beyond employment. If you can't hire a consulting firm or a training company or whatever it is, or consultants, at least try to do it in-house, where you have some time with these people. You try to teach them, okay, how do they start businesses? How can they run businesses? It's like a crash course. We know it's not easy, but it's important at least you help them to understand how they can use their terminal benefits. If they don't have proper ideas, save the money until such a time that you have a proper idea, because sometimes, employees don't know how to, a lot of employees don't know how to start and run a business, because every day you are waking up, you are reporting. You can be a finance manager or a director. It doesn't mean you know how to run a business. You can be an HR manager. It doesn't mean you know how to run business, because business has a lot of components. Like there are 5 major areas in business. You're talking about, for instance, the financial aspect, financial management. You might not know that. You're talking about human resource management. When you're running a business, you have to look at how you bring in the people, how you manage them and pay them and everything. You're looking at operational management. How do you actually make sure that this business is operating properly? Do you have the systems? Do you have everything in place? You're talking about even the marketing side and sales. How do you bring in the customers? There is a legal and compliance issue. That management aspect also, how do you make sure that you're compliant with your legal provision in the country, your NAPSA, your NEMAs, the taxes and so on. So there is a whole big space in terms of the knowledge that somebody needs to have if they have to run a proper business. So it's just important to help them with basic things in terms of entrepreneurship. How do they start? Because some people they were used to receiving a 3,000. All of a sudden, their terminal benefits, they're talking of 30,000. Hey, ni shipwe manje, because the person was used to a salary of 3,000. So now they have a 30,000. They still look at that money and say, I still have money. But that's not the case. That money, there's no more money coming. So that's why it's usually advisable that you help them to understand how they can really utilize their money beyond employment. Because some people, they dance, they finish their terminal benefits, they even leave home. And then afterwards now, it leads to families breaking down, depressions, and so on. So it's really important that you help them even as they are leaving the employment.
Okay. that employees are to receive. Maybe they go to lose their employment due to terminal by redundancy. What are some of the terminal benefits?
Yeah, so when it comes to the terminal benefits, so again, you have to look at, first of all, the provisions. Now, again, the law will give you the minimums, but you can pay more depending on the provisions of, again, the contracts, the conditions of service, or the collective agreement of the company. So, for instance, if the person has lost employment due to redundancy, the law provides under, again, Section 55, subsection 3, that you pay them 2 months basic pay for each year served. So this is why I was saying that there's actually a lot of work that goes into this, because if somebody has been working for the past, those who are on permanent, and I know sometimes we will sit there, you are computing somebody's from 1975, it's a lot of work. And depending on the model you're using, in some contracts, for instance, or in some spaces, you say the person is getting paid on the last drawn salary. That makes life easy. You compute if it's 20 months or 20 years they have done, you compute, and it makes life easy. So you have to look at those 2 months basic pay for each year saved. You pay them their leave days, which are outstanding, if they didn't go on leave. So you have to look at the files, and this is why I said at the beginning that there is a lot of work that goes on in the computations. That's why you can't just wake up and say, look, we are separating with these people, let them go. No. You look at the terminal benefits, the 2 months, the leave days, the salary for that month. Even if the person, if you say this person, the last day will be the 7th of August, as an example, those 7 days need to be paid for. You can't say, no, but we were just from paying the salary for July. So the other 7 days, it's okay. No, the person, you can't even say, no, because we have given you notice. So, no. Up to that last day, you have to compute even for those 7 days, how much will be paid. Again, depending if they were entitled to gratuities or whatever it is that they could have been entitled to, you need to compute all those things. On top of that, you have to look at any unpaid amounts. And again, we have to emphasize this, because sometimes employers, what they do is just compute what they can see. Okay, this is what now this person is entitled to as at now. But you are forgetting that maybe this person served in 1 or 2 contracts and their gratuity was still pending. You need to bring that forward, because you didn't pay at the time that amount was due and payable. So you are going to have, and that's why we say, prepare a proper final payslip. It should clearly show the earnings, and then after you do all these additions of what the person is getting paid, then you go to now the deductions. On the deductions, you are going to remove your statutory deduction. That means the NAPSA, the NEMA, and the pay-as-you-earn. So you remove the statutory deductions there, and then you're also going to remove any money that the person might owe the company. So you're going to be looking at all those things and then putting everything in the final payslip, so that it is very clear in terms of what you have computed as what the person will be entitled to versus what they have earned, less what they owe the company, and then you have the net pay. And once that is done, then share it with the employee, so that the employee can see what is exactly coming to them. If the employer has questions about them, that's why the final payslip needs to be very clean. It should be self-explanatory. You don't just go and sit in the dark room and the computer and you just say, no, we are paying you 30,000. This 30,000 is coming from what? So it needs to be very clear what is involved, and then from there, you give the person what is due to them.
Well, so there are some employers who may want to separate with some employees by way of termination by redundancy, and they quickly hire new people in the same positions. So what do you have to say about such a situation?
Yeah, so those things happen, I would say a lot, but sometimes. So what happens is that the employer For instance, like I said at the beginning, because I don't like you, so okay, how do I get rid of this person? So you quickly say, no, now we don't need this section. But really, the person, you are targeting a person or a group of persons, and that now becomes a challenge because the good part is now the law has taken care of that. So if you go into the Employment Code Act number 3 of 2019 and you go to section 57, you will find that the law has made things very, very clear that if within 9 months your situation changes, remember you had written to labor office that no, I'm separating this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one, or these categories of employees. So you put the positions there or the departments or sections, and then 2-3 months down the road, you hire someone. You had a marketing manager, you declare redundant. Then all of a sudden you say, no, marketing specialist. You try to play with fancy terminologies, but the duties really remain the same. The law is very clear now that you have to give the first opportunity to the people who actually held those positions before. Now, we have to make mention certain things. While the law says you have to give first opportunity to those people who held those positions, if as a business or as a company or an institution, your minimum requirements have changed. Let me give an example. When you have taken restructuring, you restructure the business or restructure the company or organization redesign or organization design or restructuring. And now you are saying for the general worker, we need a grade 12 as an example. Driver, you need to have this, and the next level, you need to have a certificate with X number of years of experience. For the next level, you need a diploma and maybe 3 years. The next level, you need a degree with X number of years. The next level, you need masters, maybe at management level with X number of years. So you have put now these requirements in terms of your job grades. If the person who held that position before does not qualify, you really cannot bring them back because they don't meet the qualifications. But if they meet all the qualifications, you have to have an obligation by law to bring them back. So you should. This is why from the beginning we were saying, don't try to use redundance as a way to separate with someone you don't like. If a person is just not performing or behaving, you should take them through the disciplinary process. It's not a matter of, and these things, because sometimes CEOs or senior management, they don't want to take hard decisions. I know maybe, but maybe try to use redundancy. It will not be good if you dismiss this person. Why are you thinking about whether it is not good? If indeed you have the facts with you that this person committed this offense, go through the process and not try to use now redundancy when you know that actually this position you still need it even tomorrow. Because now after you declare them redundant, you need to still bring them back.
Sure.
Yeah, if it is within 9 months.
Amazing, such an insightful conversation. Mr. Kabanda, time seems not to be with us. But before you give us your last remarks, maybe you can just read 1 or 2 messages from our viewers.
Sure.
There's a question here and it reads, what happens if one was working as a casual for 3 months and some delays, then gets injured while working? Does he qualify for compensation? Then, good afternoon, panel there. I am enjoying your program. My question is, I am dismissed for work due to illness and it was on medical ground, and I was on a permanent job. My question is, how should they pay me? And this one reads, okay, let's check the other one. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm expecting my 5th contact. The first one was 6 months, then the rest 1 year. I have never gotten a gratuity. I need the money. What should I do? From Bright in Kitwe. Maybe you can look at just these messages.
Okay, again, for our colleague who separated with the employer due to illness, again, there are specific provisions in the law regarding termination or medical discharge. So there, the key issue was the person on short term. If they were on short term, there are provisions that the person will be on full pay for 26, short term, that means a contract that is up to 12 months. The person will be on full pay for 26 days and again half pay on the next 26 days. After that, they can separate with the employer. If they were on a long-term contract, as a contract over and above 12 months, like your 2-year, 3-year, 5-year contracts, and so on. So such a person will be on full pay for 3 months and then half pay on for another 3 months. Thereafter, they can separate with the employer. But again, when the time for separation comes, the computations will be done. If they have not received their dues, again, this is the thing we have said, they should approach Labour Office with their contracts and all the documentation. And the same applies to the rest of the messages. While we'll submit this to Labour Office, it's also important, like we advised at the beginning of the program, put all your papers together. That's why Labour Office is there. They go there and then they can be helped in terms of after the Labour Office will look at the specific case that they have in order to pursue the employers.
Amazing. Mr. Kabanda, before we let you go, any last remarks about the topic of discussion for today?
Well, it's really to emphasize, while we have talked about these processes in terms of termination by redundance, what they should be doing, the payments that are due and all those things, we wish to emphasize to the employers that you need to also look at the employees who have remained in the company. That group of employees, I'll tell you from a psychology point of view, you need to take care of them, because what starts to happen to them is that they sometimes develop what we call a survivor syndrome. That means I'm here, yet my friend who has been taken out, I don't know if I'm also going to continue working. Okay, and now what that does to the employee is that there's a lot of uncertainty, and the people sometimes they can't even give their level best in the company. Sometimes they'll be busy looking for employment. So using your own facilities, you'll be there making applications. Productivity starts to go down. So it's important that you as the employer look at the people who have actually remained in the company, and you now make sure that you can give them the support, you communicate what exactly is happening and where you're going, and give them the assurance. If the process has finished, show them that everything has now come to an end. Now you do team building activities, you do some more training for them, you redistribute the works to a point there where people understand how they'll be working going forward, and so that and then just focus on building teamwork. But over and above is to really wish employers and employees the very best in their employment relationship. And once again, we greatly appreciate all those that have followed us on LinkedIn, which is a professional site now. I have 33,800 followers. On Facebook now I have 18,000 followers. Recently opened TikTok. I'm now followed by 8,000 people on TikTok. So we've provided platforms where we are sharing knowledge, so people can easily just look for Owen Kabanda, and they should be able to find anything that pertains to management and leadership issues and employment matters.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Mr. Kabanda.
Thank you so much.
There you have it. You've been watching Labour Matters on KBN TV, channel 279 Face TV, 47 Go TV 1 and 02 on Topsa Decoder. If you've just joined us, please do go on our social media, Facebook page to be precise, and just look for KBN TV and do look for all episodes of Labour Matters, because we've been streaming live all the episodes. And today we were looking at an interesting topic, which was termination by redundancy. And Mr. Kabanda did help us elaborate more of our topic of discussion for today. I have been your host, Patricia Chilemko. Do make a date with us next week from 14 hours to 15 hours only on KBN TV. From me, it's bye-bye and God bless.
And you know what you're doing. Y'all ready?